I've been working on a deep dive into the Ruby Franke case, and I've turned up a few things I want to share with you. First of all, my question is, who is to blame when it comes to the well being of Ruby Franke's children? Ruby Franke and her business partner, Jody Hildebrandt, have both been arrested and are in jail in St. George, Utah, awaiting their bail hearing, which will be Monday, September 18th, after Ruby's son escaped out a window and went to a neighbor's house. He escaped from Jody Hildebrandt's home. Both Ruby and Jody have had health issues while they've been in jail, and we don't have a lot of details about that, but apparently they don't like being locked up. When you combine all their past history and the things that they have even posted online, there is plenty to learn about. I found quite a few things out. Our top three candidates are Ruby Franke, Jody Hildebrandt, and Kevin Franke, mom, dad, and therapist. So let's get started. Ruby Franke is in jail in St. George and awaiting her hearing, which will be on Monday. I have already requested a link for that hearing, and hopefully there won't be the problems that there were last time. It's a public streamed hearing, but last time there were over 1,300 people trying to get in for 1,000 slots. It was bumping everybody out, including the judge. So, hopefully they've got that figured out. But the bottom line is, we're still waiting to see what happens. Will Ruby and Jody get bail? And if so, how much will it be? Let's face it, there's two factors. It's basically, are they flight risk and are they a harm to the community? That's the questions. So we'll see. Monday will be a tell-all day. But before that happens, there's a lot of information that I've uncovered about Ruby and about Jody and Kevin. So let's dive in and see who is accountable for what. I have already uncovered a lot about Ruby, and I've put them in 2 or 3 different posts if you want to check out some of those. I've shown many different videos of Ruby herself and her crazy parenting techniques, so check those out. Let me show you one of the tamer video clips just as an example.
Have privacy. In fact, your job as a mother is to constantly be scrutinizing her, to constantly be judging her choices. If you begin to trust your daughter, you're going to go blind to all of the distortion.
But there's still more information. There were questions that I had, like, when did she start this craziness? And the answer came by her sisters posting some videos.
3 years ago, Ruby and Kevin cut our family off, and eventually they cut Kevin's family off as well. And I thought that was going to end my mom. She literally had a heart attack. She went into kidney failure. Her body was shutting down. The first thing that I want to say is that we have kept quiet for 3 years on the topic of our sister Ruby and Jody and Kevin and connections. That is what we have stayed quiet about. We did not know what they were doing because, like we said, we were cut off. We did not have access to anyone. My thoughts towards Ruby and Jody and Kevin and connections is that it was all bullcrap. It was complete indoctrination of this thing that they created. I don't agree with how extreme they are on everything. I knew they were weird. I knew that they were off. Those are the things that we kept quiet about, because what was I gonna say? What was I going to I was not going to come out and publicly say that I don't like my sister and I don't like what she's doing and I think she's weird. That is what we kept quiet about. It wasn't until about a year ago when we were able to reconnect with Sherry. Again, we kept that quiet. We never came out and said anything. You guys saw us together, and those were little glimpses when Sherry was ready to allow us to show those glimpses with her permission. And it was then that we were learning slowly bits and pieces of more. And that's where the part of behind the scenes, we did everything that we could. We did everything legally that we could do.
Okay, now we're starting to put together a timeline. 3 years ago, when Ruby started counseling with Jody, it wasn't long after that she started separating from all of her friends and family who did not agree with her.
And for those that were saying that they'd go in and bust down doors and do whatever it took to end up in jail, because from jail, I can't do anything. So I still stand by what I said, is that I did everything that I could with the knowledge that I had. So when I say that Ruby and Kevin and Jody and connections have been destroying our lives offline for the last 3 years, that is exactly what they've been doing.
Okay, there's a lot of allegations going around for all three, but let's deep dive into Kevin. How much did Kevin know? When did he know it? And what did he do about it? That's the question that I have. And was he involved? Let's see what I've uncovered so far. According to Kevin's attorney, Kevin has not been in the family for 13 months. He's been separated, had no part in parenting or anything, lived separately, just sent money and didn't ask questions. There has been no legal divorce and there's no child custody. He just agreed to leave. And according to his attorney, Kevin is a victim of Jody and Ruby as well. Do I believe that's true? Well, let's dive a little deeper.
The one person that could have done something within his legal right was Kevin. We had zero contact with him. It was Kevin's job to check in on things, and he did not, causing turmoil within our family. We would talk in circles because nothing made sense.
I think about how Sherry, the oldest daughter away at college, called the police to report that her mother had left the young children unattended for almost a week. There's no mention of Kevin. Obviously, she couldn't call her dad and say, "Dad, what about the kids?" I think there's some big red flags when it comes to Kevin.
You guys, it's crazy, ridiculous how people are so scared of responsibility. It really does freak me out just a little bit. It's where the entitlement has come in, and so many parents are scared to raise their teenage kids. So many parents are scared of their kids. Do not be scared of your kids. Don't. Something Kevin and I have done with our children that is actually working really well, and they're not anybody's children but mine and Kevin's, and we are doing a really good job of listening to them. Number one most triggering thing Kevin and I have ever talked about, it is not sex, and it is not politics, and it is not religion. If you want to get people really riled up in social media, you start talking about responsibility. It's like the R word. People don't like to hear it. And we are actually training our children to be ready for the real world. We've been accused of not training them for the real world. Actually, we are. And I think
just because we shield them from distractions, we're being told that we're not preparing them for the real world.
I think that there is a lot of fear that is coming because the viewer actually isn't. If you are one of those people who has commented hate, because we're not preparing our children for the real world. I think the truth is yours. One comment once explaining how I expect our children to live out on their own outside of the house after they're 18 and after they've graduated from high school. I was accused of abuse. It's like, it's abuse to expect your children to be responsible.
To grow up and be productive adults.
You guys, it's crazy, ridiculous how people are so scared of responsibility. It really does freak me out just a little bit. It's where the entitlement has come in, and so many parents are scared to raise their teenage kids. So many parents are scared of their kids.
Kevin is going along with everything Ruby is saying. Now, granted, she might be gaslighting like crazy, which it certainly sounds like she is. Holy moly, I don't even know what she's talking about. But he's going along. Is he, in fact, a victim as well? And he's just trying to make it through the day? Or is he a part of it all? So much of what Ruby is saying that's just nonsensical, going in circles, and who knows what she's talking about. Well, I'll tell you who knows. Jessie Hildebrandt. She did a 3-hour interview. I listened to every single minute of it. And so much of what Ruby is saying and her reasoning for her crazy parenting techniques comes from her aunt, Miss Jody. It appears that the crazy, horrendous parenting ideas came from Jody. Let's deep dive into her. According to Ruby's sisters, all the trouble started when Ruby started counseling with Jody. And even Kevin's attorney has said everything went south because of Jody. Okay, when we're talking about Jody, I think it's interesting that so many of the things that are coming to light that happened to Ruby's family, to Ruby's children, are the same things that Jody's niece, Jessie, has revealed on a number of different interviews that happened to her 14 years ago. 14. If people would have believed her then and action would have been taken against Jody, would all the things that have happened now have happened? This is the question of the hour. Would Ruby and Kevin come to this type of parenting without the influence of Jody? Well, there's a lot to say about Jody. She definitely had her way of therapy. It's even alleged that she was involved with the therapy session that was done for Paris Hilton all those years ago when she was yanked out of her home and taken to a facility in Orem, Utah, where she had a lot of abuse happen to her. Was it under the head of Jodi Hildebrandt all those years ago? Well, that's a question that will be answered, I'm sure. But let's talk about what we know for sure. Jessie has made a lot of claims, and I find it absolutely fascinating that so many of the claims that she said are the same language that Ruby has been promoting on her 8 Passangers YouTube channel. So, how did it start? Because Ruby went to a therapist. Guess who? Jodi Hildebrandt. And as we all agree, therapy is a wonderful thing that can help so many people, unless you get the wrong therapist. And some therapists, namely Jody, have ruined so many people's lives. Countless couples are now coming forward saying she destroyed our marriage. She destroyed our family. This has been going on for a long time. But for Ruby, it started 3 years ago. And when she started her crazy rhetoric, she eventually was telling her siblings, telling her family, and because they didn't agree with her, she cut off all ties with them. 100%. They were not given access to her, her husband, her children. Who does that remind you of? Talk about cult like behavior. And if she isn't Lori Vallow's twin, I don't know who is. This is crazy. It's like she's a cross between Larry Nassar, Lori Vallow, and Scientology terminology, where, in Scientology, you get in trouble and you get put in the hole where you can't eat or drink and all your rights are taken away. Sound familiar? Well, that's what cults do. I was thinking of, I love to watch Mike King in Profiling Evil. And many times he trains about how to profile a criminal. And one thing that I learned from watching his channel is that criminals will adjust and adapt according to what works for them. And you can see that Jodi Hildebrandt has adjusted and adapted over the years and tuned in her criminology, tuned it to the point of being able to make people do her bidding. Okay, let's talk about Kevin. He has been estranged from his wife for 13 months. And Ruby and Jody have accused him of all kinds of things, and he basically felt like he needed to leave the family in order to save his marriage. And my guess is they did to him what was done to Jesse all those years ago, and that is just accuse him and accuse him and accuse him. And there might be some infraction, and then they accuse him and make it worse, 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 to the point where he started to believe it. Maybe some of it's true. I don't know. But I will say this, according to Kevin's attorney, Kevin is a victim here as well. Now, do I believe that? I'm not so sure. Here's the thing. I think that it's kind of like when you're talking about, again, the Lori Vallow case is so similar. There are people who maybe weren't the ones who were doing the major harm, and yet they knew the major harm was happening and they didn't do anything to prevent it. How culpable are these people? Well, when it comes to Kevin, I personally feel like he's very culpable. He's the father. He's the husband. Why didn't he if he couldn't protect himself, why didn't he protect his children? Or at least raise red flags? So to me, he's culpable. I feel sorry for him. Now let's talk about Ruby. I think that Ruby is a narcissist. That's my own personal thoughts. And I think she's been a narcissist. And narcissists seek out all types of things. And I think that there was a time when Ruby was still in contact with her family, with her parents. I'm sure she was still a narcissist then, but it was things that you could deal with and live with. And then when she got that extreme parenting jargon, whatever it is, with Ruby, then her narcissism took over and she fully engulfed it. And then at that point, she cut off all ties with anybody who didn't agree with her. Do you know anybody like that? Now, I want to talk about the viewers. I know that there's a lot of opinions out there, and we're all entitled to our opinions, but here's what I think. I think that a lot of people are throwing stones at Ruby's siblings, her parents, and a lot of people who stood by. And in the case of her sisters and her parents, and really apparently Kevin's parents and family, they weren't allowed. They weren't allowed to help or intervene or to have an opinion. They were cut off, 100% cut off. And legally, those parents have the right to do that. And you have no way. What, you're going to try to get your sister thrown in jail because she doesn't want to talk to you? These, according to the sisters, they had no idea about the abuse that was going on. They just knew that she was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And they also knew that they didn't agree with her and she cut off ties with them. Do you have anybody in your life that you think is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs who you don't agree with? But you can't exactly get them thrown in jail just because they're weird. The the only time that they can get thrown in jail is when more revelations came forward. And I think that even those children were so brainwashed that they believed they were evil and deserved what they got, to the point that they didn't alert authorities. They didn't, come forward. And it wasn't until Sherry, the oldest daughter, moved away and then started finally to reconnect with her aunts that she found out this rhetoric that she's been told and been doing her whole life according to her mother's demands was not right. And who knows what all the mother had been saying about everyone, because that's what they do. Look at, we have tape recordings. She herself explains it over and over and over again. She's her own worst witness in this case, or best for the prosecutors, because it's all out there. So who do I think's to blame? Ruby, Jody, Kevin. That's who's to blame. Let me know your thoughts, and we'll see what happens in the court on Monday. Bail hearing's going to be interesting. Don't forget to subscribe so you can hear more, and I'll see you soon. See ya.